Yesterday, I learned that the Johnson family has decided to get out of the publishing business. Now, the Johnson family, which started with the patriarch John H. Johnson, was the founder of the Johnson Publications, which published the magazines Ebony and Jet, and in previous years, other magazines such as Ebony Man and magazines like Hue and Ten. And they were the first black publishers of magazines in America. And they were very important to black history because they were the only ones who presented a balanced viewpoint of the African American image, a balanced picture of African American culture, and an archive of African American history that African Americans can follow. And these days, with the viewpoint of media becoming more consolidated, African Americans really need to worry about the sale of an institution like your Johnson Publications because whoever controls that media controls the image of African Americans. And if you control the image of African Americans, you can control how generations can see the image of African Americans. So it's very important for us to know who these owners are, what these owners' viewpoints are, and what their opinions and viewpoints of African Americans are. And a lot of African Americans, they're thinking, oh, Ebony and Jet are safe because this investment company, owns them. But that's not the case at all. It's a guy who works in publishing, a guy who understands the media. I understand that just because these people at Ebony and Jet are being told that they're going to be able to run business as usual does not mean it's going to be business as usual. In the publishing business, it works like this. The person who has the money pretty much dictates the narrative of that media. That person with the money pretty much presents their viewpoint in media. The person with the money pretty much presents their perspective in the media. And if you control the dollars that are paying for the printing presses, paying for the photographers, paying for the writers, you are the one dictating the terms to everyone else. And John H. Johnson understood this. He understood this, and this is why he started, Johnson Publications with $500 from his mother, because he understood that if he has the money, he controls the viewpoint. He controls the opinion. He controls the media that is being published by that publisher. I understand that as the publisher of SJS Direct, that if I take my money and I go out and I publish a book like a Spinsterella, which features a African American goth, that's what I want to present to people. And that's why it's important for the owner, people to understand the power of owning media. And this is something, sadly, that was not passed down to the Johnson family children. They didn't understand that the owner controls what media is produced. The owner presents the viewpoints because the owner controls the dollars. If you do not control the dollars, then you do not control what is presented in that media. You do not you don't control what is viewpoints presented there. You don't you don't control anything, and the images presented in that media are reflective of that owner's viewpoint. This is a point that I also made in another one of my novels, The Temptation of John Haynes, when I talked about the control of media. He talks about it in a couple of chapters when he has a friend whose father owned a radio station, and he saw that this black-owned radio station was one of the last in the area. And when he became a CEO of a corporation, he decided to help that radio station by giving it an advertising contract. Even though he disagreed with the guy personally, he understood what was important in the long term, which was preserving that black-owned radio station so those black viewpoints could remain on the air. And this is something that the Johnson family did not teach their children, that it's important for us to own our own media so that our viewpoint remains circulated. Because before the Johnson family created the Ebony and the Jet, which presented, humanized and balanced images of African Americans, there were no black magazine publishers. And that really impacted the way black people saw themselves, because the way we saw ourselves in mainstream media primarily was being represented as coons, being represented as minstrels, being represented as black brutes, being represented as mammies, and if it wasn't for black newspapers, wouldn't really have seen much of that. But Ebony pretty much gave us a bigger picture because it was distributed nationwide, whereas most of these black newspapers were pretty much local or regional, and occasionally they were distributed, to other areas. Now the only one that was really distributed largely across the nation was primarily Amsterdam News, but it was very rare, for black papers to go outside of a certain region, and the new black newspapers were the only way a lot of us knew what was going on in the black community, especially with those lynchings in the South. So we really wouldn't have known about that if it wasn't for black newspapers. So that's another reason why it's important for us to own our own media and make sure, more importantly, we know who is controlling our media. Because if we know who is controlling our media, then we understand who is presenting the viewpoints of African Americans in media. If we understand who is the owner, what is their viewpoint of black people, what is their perception of black people, and what is presented in their images of black people, we can then know who to hold account. But with this deal that was announced, that they sold it to this firm for an undisclosed sum. We do not know who these owners are. We do not know what their viewpoints are. We do not know what their perspective of black people is. And it is very important for the right person to control black media. Because as we've seen so far in recent years with people like your Tyler Perry, who was incompetent in managing and maintaining the black image, that if the wrong person is controlling the image, we're going to get images of African American life that are not balanced, that reinforce and breathe new life in the old stereotypes, and present a negative image of African Americans. And if someone like your Lee Daniels gets a hold of black media like your Ebony or your Jet, what's going to happen is you're going to get an extremely, self-hating, pandering view of African Americans presented to you in media. Because a man like Lee Daniels, his view of black people is that he has a lot of contempt for black people, and that is expressed in the media he produces, like your Precious, your Monsters Ball, and your Empire. And if you get somebody like that presenting images of African Americans in media, that can have a disastrous effect, because I personally believe in between your Perry and your Daniels, this is why we have seen, black culture pretty much head on this decline, because they ushered in this new era of, as I see it, modern day minstrels by producing media like that. And this is why it's very important for us to know who these new owners are, because you have to make sure you know who these people are, because an image, it says 1,000 words about African Americans. The wrong picture, can give an idea of black people of what not to be, and you'll have people following it, like a lot of people followed, this thug culture and this gangster rap back in the 90s, when people started following that media, and because no black people were understanding the value of media and the value of owning media, we lost, as I believe it, an entire generation to that dysfunctional thug culture, which was created by Madison Avenue advertisers, Hollywood movie studios, and a group of sold-out Afro-American Negroes who were looking to get dollars instead of looking at the cultural impact of their behaviors long-term on black society. And when I look at this, this sale, it shows me, a very dangerous thing, regarding the black image, because it shows me that no one understands the value of controlling the black image. No one understands the value of maintaining control over the black image. And no one really understands why we need black media. I mean, I watched a video a while back where Tariq Nasheed said that black media is dead. And I look at the sale of Ebony to this other firm, and then they're going to call it Ebony Media. And it shows me that black media is dead, because we are not looking at who is controlling that media, who is presenting the viewpoints of black people, and why it's important for us to maintain control of that image, and why it's important for the right people to control, black media. Because I look at what was coming out of your Ebony's and over the last couple of years, and it clearly showed me that the magazine had lost track of John H. Johnson's vision, which was presenting those balanced and humanized images of African Americans. Instead, the magazine over the last couple of years has been focused on celebrities, celebrity nonsense, and stuff that is more of a feminist bent. And the same thing with Essence magazine, which became Black Cosmopolitan. And people didn't understand that when Time Warner took a hold of Essence, they turned it into basically a Black Cosmopolitan. They turned it into a magazine which did not present, the balanced images that came out when Gordon Parks founded the magazine back in the 70s, or when Susan Taylor was running it, where we were presenting with viewpoints talking about the black woman's self-esteem, the black woman's self-worth, black women focusing on empowerment, black women focusing on business ownership, and the same thing with Ebony. It was a focus on, our black entrepreneurs, our black business owners, and that focus has shifted, and everything now is focused on Hollywood gossip, celebrity nonsense, and foolishness. And that's not what a good magazine is about. A good magazine, opens you up to and shows you a world in pictures that people don't see. They show you different cultures. They show you different viewpoints. They show you different ideas. I mean, I look at your Ebony and your Jet and your Essence, and I have yet to see anyone talking about things like your black fantasy, your black science fiction, or your African American goth subculture. Now, I would think, as a magazine, if I was a magazine publisher, those would be articles I would be putting in my magazine. I would even put that on my cover because that's going to attract people's attention and show them a broader picture of black culture than what they've been presented. Because what we've been presented in media these days is a very narrow view of African American life and African American culture. And again, that's because the owners of these publications pretty much do not have any vision, to show that bigger picture of African American culture or African American, history or heritage. And they had all the tools there. I mean, as a publisher, Johnson had all the tools. I mean, you have this archive of photos, and with all this print-on-demand technology, again, they could easily had a revenue stream where they just made photo books, just with those photos, or where they detailed Black history. They could have easily done that as photo books or e-books, but again, because the owner had no vision into taking their product into the 21st century, they decide, I'm going to sell it for some quick cash, and they'd rather be rich rather than be wealthy. And that's the whole thing that John H. Johnson was trying to give to his family was wealth. And they didn't understand that wealth is what you own. And those fixed tangible assets, like that photo archive, which they're trying to sell, and those printing presses, and all those tools were ways of making money. And the reference that I just made, that was with where you take those photos and you make yourself some nice e-books or photo books, and you talk about Black history and you sell it on Amazon, on the Kindle, or Smashwords. That was a revenue stream. But unfortunately, because the people working there at Johnson had no vision, and they couldn't look at the bigger media picture regarding digital publishing like I do, because I came up with the print-on-demand era and I understood it backwards and forwards. They don't see those avenues as revenue streams which could make money for their publisher. And they also didn't look at, what type of articles they were putting out. And that's one of the reasons why the magazine wound up in trouble, because I'm looking at it and it's like, nobody really cares about celebrities. You can get celebrity information off the internet. People like myself, we buy magazines primarily because we want to see those balanced, humanized images of African Americans, one, and we want to learn more about Black culture. And that was one of the things that Ebony used to present. They used to present you with these pictures of Black life, pictures of Black culture. And no one was really focusing on that. They were focusing on your Steve Harveys and these other celebrities. And that may get people's attention for a second, but what really gets people's attention primarily when you're doing a publication is the articles. If your articles are filled with substance, you're going to get readers on the regular. And if you produce content, that really makes you think, it's going to get people reading. People want to read magazines, but there has to be something in them that people want to read. And now it's a real shame that this magazine, at the Johnson family, is walking away from the publishing business, because we really understood what viewpoints they were presenting of Black people in the media. We understood that we could go to the Johnson family, but when you have a corporate business, running the firm, running things, they pretty much, we don't know who's running that. We don't know who's in this investment from. Yes, they're going to put a figurehead there, and all these people are going to be working there, But again, the owner pretty much controls the viewpoint that is presented in that media because the owner is paying for that media. The owner's money is paying for that media. And those sponsors with the ad dollars, they're paying part of it. And they're going to say they're going to want certain things from that corporate owner. And if they want those viewpoints presented, then they're going to get that. But the African Americans, they don't understand, why it's important for us to own our media, why it's important for our media to remain independent, and why it's important for us to control it because the person who controls the money is the person who controls the image of African Americans in media. And if that person is the wrong person, we are going to be seeing images of African Americans that reinforce the oldest stereotypes presented of African Americans since the 1930s, which are those mammies, those coons, those brutes, and other assorted minstrel images, which present the most negative image of African Americans in media. And it's sad these days that we have ebony, being sold, and then we look at the other forms of publishers out there, quite a few of them, who are producing this street lit and these swirl novels and other forms of publications, and we see that the image of black people is sadly not being tarnished by white racists, but it's by black people themselves, and black people themselves do not understand how important it is for us to have the right people controlling our image, because if the wrong people control our image, then we're going to get a picture of ourselves that the next generation is going to see that is going to tell them, a negative picture of African American life, African American culture, and show them, something that is going to be very destructive to them and a model for what is being destructive to them, because the previous generation didn't have the time or the courage to come out here and speak to them about why these institutions are important, why these institutions need to be protected, why these institutions need to be preserved, because the only media that we own and control is black media, and sadly these days a lot of us think that selling that media is a good thing, not understanding that selling our media to other people means they are going to be controlling the viewpoint and perspective of black people. They're going to be controlling the narrative of black history, and they're going to be controlling the narrative of black culture. And again, if that person is not favorable of black people, those images can be destructive to black people. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.